everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Measuring Business Value Delivery Using OKRs and Targetprocess, brought to you by ICON Agility Services and Targetprocess. My name is Alyssa Hamilton, and I'm ICON's Head of Marketing and your moderator for today. Before getting started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. First, all registrants will get a copy of the webinar recording approximately 24 hours after the webinar ends. And second, as you listen to Larry and Urian and come up with questions, please type them into the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen at any time. We will get to as many questions as we can during the last 10 to 15 minutes of today's presentation. Okay, so now I will introduce the speakers for today. First, I'd like to introduce Larry LaSalle. He is a business agility consultant and leadership coach for ICON, in addition to being a SAFE program consultant and the founder and CEO of Scaled OKRs. Larry consults with organizations that are going through enterprise agile transformations and helps them leverage OKRs to create comprehensive transformation strategies. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Alyssa, thank you.
Yeah. And we also have Urian van der Laan, enterprise agile coach, SAFE program consultant, and specialist solution designer at Targetprocess. He is the creator of the first version of the OKR solution at Targetprocess. And he is passionate about creating good OKRs and integrating them with SAFE practices to help companies reach their full business agility potential. Hi, Urian.
Hi, Alyssa. Thank you.
So before we begin our presentation, we'd like to share a little more about ICON and Targetprocess to set the context for the webinar today. So first, a little bit about ICON. We are a coaching and training services company that creates transformative and collaborative solutions for both business and IT. We're best known for our work with the Scaled Agile Framework, DevSecOps, and Business Agility. Currently, we are the leading SAFE Gold SBCT partner with 2 SAFE Fellows, 5 SAFE Program Consultant Trainers, and over 100 SAFE Program Consultants. And these are people who have extensive experience helping enterprises implement SAFE and gain deep understanding of the lean agile practices and principles that we teach. And as part of our work with business agility, we are helping companies to leverage OKRs to capture a successful organizational strategy. And this is what we'll be presenting today. So if you find yourself needing help or more information in this area, feel free to browse through our website or contact us at info@iconagility.com. All right, and now I will turn it over to Urian to talk about Targetprocess.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, Targetprocess is a company that creates a tool for agile work and portfolio management. We were founded in 2004 and currently we employ about 130 people. We have over 1,000 customers globally, mostly in the United States and the Americas and Europe. And amount of users currently using our tool is about 50,000 and even more. We have offices in Buffalo, in Toronto, Berlin, and Minsk, Belarus. Mainly we support SAFE Agile Work Management, like SAFE Agile at Scale, but also custom or hybrid Agile traditional processes. Since this year, we have been recognized as a leader by Gartner in the area of Agile Lifecycle Management. And we integrate very well with existing team level tools like Jira or Azure DevOps. Thank you, Liz.
Okay. All right, thanks, Urian. Hi, everyone, welcome. We're gonna just get started here by looking at what are some of the key outcomes that we wanna accomplish with today's discussion. So the first part and the bulk of the discussion is gonna be around the what, why, and how of the business value delivery framework. So we get to take a little bit of a shortcut and start out right away by looking at what the business value delivery framework is and understand kind of what led to it and what it's trying to accomplish, what are some of the goals behind it. From there, we're going to get into a demo of how Targetprocess supports the business value delivery framework. Following that, we'll talk about how to operationalize OKRs based on some best practices that are starting to emerge and some ideas on how to really optimize OKRs to support something like a business value delivery framework. After that, we will do another demo with Targetprocess, and we'll look at how Targetprocess supports that operationalization of the OKR cycle. So without further ado, we will jump in here and look at this image. So the first thing we want to do is understand what it is that we're looking at. And so the way I like to kind of unpack this is to look at it from the left side and the right side. So the left side, where you see the blue rectangles and the yellow lines, is really what I like to say is our expression of strategy on the left side. And on the right side, where we see the beginning of the diagonal lines and the epics, is we talk about that being our implementation and validation of hypothesis-driven product delivery. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes on this because I want to step through it here so you can understand it. I will say that there is a deeper understanding of some of these topics that will be required to fully understand this. We're going to introduce them to you, so you won't leave without at least an introduction to the mechanics behind this and what it's trying to solve for and things of that nature. But on the left side, far left side, it starts with what we call company level OKRs, or what I'm calling company level OKRs. The other way to think about this is these are our strategic outcomes, okay? From there, we get into our line of business or product level OKRs. And so these are our solution outcomes. And so you can see just on the left side alone, what we're really working to do here is start to build some integration of our strategy at different degrees of how those strategies are expressed. Company level, much higher, they're higher level strategies. They're directionally, longer term in terms of how long we're out to try and accomplish those OKRs. The product level are more tactical. They're getting down into the what specifically do we want to try to accomplish. And then on the far right side, we get into the implementation or the solution validation side of this. And so we'll walk through an example here quickly so you can kind of see how we build on the OKR strategy expression side and then the implementation side. So you can see that the big objective here is to increase recurring revenue. And then we can follow through these KRs where we have a KR here to reach monthly recurring revenue of $250,000. And so from there, we get into a couple OKRs that are at the next level down that are influenced by, they're not, the connection here looks much more explicit, but they're influenced by this KR. They're saying these are things we can build to accomplish this KR. And so we say, well, we can expand to Southeast region, and then we have a couple of objectives or key results that we can accomplish to accomplish that objective. From there, we can now start to think more in terms of put our product development hat on and start to think, from that hypothesis-driven development side of things, what are some tactical things we can build that would allow us to reach this key result? And in this case, for the example, we talk about a referral program, which we want to get 250 new customers. That would be our leading indicator on this idea. And then the other experiment we can do would be a 3-month bundle with Apple Music to get 750 new customers. And so that's our leading indicator. So we build these, and then we start to measure our outcomes to see how we are accomplishing back to our, how we're performing rather back to our key result. And so that's the linkage from what we build back to the key result. So this gives us our measurable outcomes. But using the right framework, we can also make decisions around, based on our leading indicators, whether we want to stop work or whether we want to continue work. In this case, we didn't actually achieve what we set out to achieve. But down here, we actually exceeded more. Our actual was 900 new customers. So we have 150 from our goal, and we have 925 total toward our 1,000 new customers. So let's keep building that. Let's extend that. So that's the idea behind it. Now, what led to this was a lot of discussion with clients about measuring business value. There's a lot of that discussion in the SAFE framework when you introduce the idea of measuring business value of PI objectives. And it gets their minds thinking, okay, I like the idea of being able to measure business value, but just telling me, a value of 1 to 10 and how that helps me, see predictability of our organization's ability to deliver predictably is one thing, but how do I know the work is actually valuable? And that's not easy to do, because most of the time the work that is in the pipeline, so to speak, doesn't necessarily have all the metadata on it that we want to have in order to easily be able to say that we not only accomplished what we set out to accomplish, but that we did it related to the strategy that we were working toward as well. So we put this together, and a couple ways to think about this. If it's trying to drive behaviors in your organization to think from an outcomes perspective, this would start to get those measurable outcomes from not only the top of the house, our company level, but also link those to our next level down and then express those out to the work that we're doing. If it's just an integration of strategy, meaning you like the idea of being able to associate our strategy to execution, but we want to be able to do that in an explicit way, then this is a framework that you could use to be able to start to build that in your organization. Okay, now you may be looking at this saying, yeah, this is great and good, but my organization's still very much in project delivery, project-based delivery. We're not to all these epics and features and things of that nature. So what do we do in that case? And in that case, what I like to say, and what I help clients do, is actually take that in-flight project-based work and start to do a reconciliation of it. Because project-based work a lot of times doesn't necessarily have the attributes on it that will enable us to be able to measure and make pivot or persevere type decisions on that work of whether we want to continue or not, because we're always out to kind of complete the entire project. So this project or solution reconciliation canvas allows us to capture some key things like, what is the strategic theme it's linked to? What is the problem that it's solving for? What is our value proposition? In other words, what is it we're building? And then what are some key metrics that we can capture? So if you captured these 4 things on in-flight work and then established your OKRs, you could start to build a connection from that, okay? So that was the what behind this business value delivery framework. Now we want to start to get into the why. And the why, I like to start with this slide to kind of turn the lens a little bit, tip the lens a little bit, because we have a tendency that when we're seeing something new, we get really mechanical about it. We lose sight of the bigger problem that we're trying to solve for. So I use this in a lot of the Agile classes that I teach, and it's a quote from Peter Drucker that said, "There's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all." The message I'm sending to the people that I'm teaching at that point is, look, we're learning about Agile, but we can't just go back to our organizations and continue doing all the same work the same way, or in a more efficient way, because we need to challenge that the work that we're doing and the way we're shaping that work is actually lending itself toward this new method of delivery. So if we kind of borrow from this the idea that there's a bigger problem to be solved, in other words, we talk about this idea of connecting strategy to execution and integrating the strategy into the work that we're doing. But what's the bigger problem that it's solving for? And for that, I'd like to look at this. It's the output of a MIT Sloan study or survey, where they looked at, I don't remember the exact number, it may have been like 2,000 organizations. Some of you may have seen this. You can type in, Google the "no one knows your strategy," and you'll find this inevitably. But what it highlights is this decay rate of understanding in organizations. What they found is that if you ask the top of the house, the C-level executives in the organization, what are the top 3 things that we're going after as an organization? What are the top 3 strategic priorities? At the top of the house, only 51% could do that. By the time you get down to the boots on the ground, so to speak, that number decreases down to 13%. So you can see this decay rate of understanding as it relates to our strategy. We talk a lot about employee engagement and other systemic challenges that organizations face. And a lot of it really boils down to the fact that we're not all aligned with a common understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve. What are the big outcomes we're working for? How does the work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis relate to the bigger things we're trying to accomplish as an organization or a product line, you know, a team of teams? What is it that we're going after? And so when we talk about the ideas of this business value delivery framework, we have to understand that it's more than doing the mechanics of connecting strategy to work and doing this throughput. There's the advantage that we gain by having an aligned workforce. And now we start to talk about what is the benefits of that. When we talk about the benefits of a highly aligned workforce, what we're talking about is our ability to outperform competitors in not a small way. 58% growth in revenue, faster than highly misaligned companies, and 72% more profitable. So the stakes of us getting aligned and getting aligned on the right things are really high. And that's what that's kind of that why beneath this business value delivery framework. And so really the goal here is for us to be able to answer these questions. Are we doing the right work, the right time, for the right reasons? And is the work we're doing aligned to our strategy? If we can fundamentally put the pieces and parts, people, process, and technology in place to answer these questions, you can expect that we will be a high-performing organization. And so these are the questions we need to be asking. So a little bit more to kind of build on this, getting into the tactical of the how now. One side of the equation is objectives and key results. And so this right here, what you're looking at, would be the most basic understanding of objectives and key results. This is kind of what I would say the running around level understanding that a lot of people have based on what I'm observing about objectives and key results. Just the most mechanical aspect of how do I write objectives, how do I write key results? And even this has different camps in terms of how to do it. But this is about the level of understanding I see. And so what I want to do is encourage everyone to get this definition, which is understand the difference between OKRs and the OKR framework, because that's really what we're trying to connect here. So this definition tells us that OKRs are a strategy and alignment framework that seeks to ensure organizational clarity by creating an environment of common goals and shared commitments. So with this definition, we understand what's more beneath the OKRs that we're trying to establish within the organization. I don't want to go so far as to talk about culture changes and things of that nature. That swings the pendulum a bit too far, but we do need to recognize behavior changes that need to start happening, ways that we're thinking about the work that need to change, a willingness to lean in to the idea of really putting thought into what is the outcome that we're driving toward. And so this is a step toward becoming a really outcomes-driven organization. It does require that kind of top of the house involvement. Like a lot of the things, you know, we do from an agile perspective, you go so far and you hit a plateau unless you can get further up into the organization to start getting, you know, involvement and behavior changes and decision making changes out of more of the top of the house. So when you look at that within the context of the business value delivery framework, we're talking about it really starts there. We need that company level context, and we need that line of business context expressed in a similar way. One of the things I see very commonly is you'll have the top of the house objectives expressed in a way that's not measurable. They'll be like growth, or they might be something about operational excellence or some other expression that doesn't necessarily, I like to say, I could put that strategy that I see in some organizations in any organization and it would apply. I want to know what's unique to your organization, what's driving your organization. And then I want to express it in a similar fashion at the line of business level or the product level, so that we know, if whatever we're doing to deliver outcomes at this level, that we're actually delivering against the higher level strategy. Final slide, we're going to get to, or 2 slides, and then we're going to get to the demo. This is another key piece. This is the right side of the equation on that business value delivery framework. And this is where an equally important level of behavior changes in the way we think needs to happen, more or less kind of at that product level, where in order for us to kind of build upon this outcomes-driven way of working, we want to become more this hypothesis-driven MVP, minimum viable product type, deliverables, if you will, with leading indicators that will help us to determine and make the continued pivot, pause, or stop decisions around the work that we're doing. So these are all important so that we can know how we're going to continue to build upon the outcomes that we're trying to deliver. So if you've paid super close attention for the last few minutes, what you'll really recognize in this business value delivery framework is we're integrating 2 valuable frameworks. We're integrating together an OKR framework that's more at that, that framework level definition, not just the tactical objective key result definition, the strategy and alignment framework. And we're connecting it to lean startup way of thinking about the work that we're doing and figuring out a way to make an explicit connection between the 2. That's what we're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yurian. And as I do, I want to just give a quick thank you to Targetprocess for being, just super valuable partners and collaborating partners in this idea to figure out how do we actually build a platform that will enable the ability to do what we're talking about in this business value delivery framework. So it's been fun working with them. It's been fun to see that work manifest at clients, and see the value that it's and the thinking that it really prompts with the daily work that they do. So I'll stop sharing and turn it over to Yurian. Yurian?
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Larry. Yes, we're totally on the same page regarding OKRs, and we have a successful track record of collaborating together on several OKR implementations. So let me share my screen and tell you about how Targetprocess helps with this. Okay, so as said before, Targetprocess is an agile work and portfolio management tool. But what does that exactly mean? I think the best way to start with that is to show you quickly the Targetprocess data model, so you understand what information you can store and manage in Targetprocess. So at the heart of Targetprocess is your work item hierarchy, your standard agile work item hierarchy, all the way from your portfolio epics to user stories, talks, and bus at the lower level, organized in sprints or products and projects. That's how Targetprocess started, but during the years we added more and more related information to support more and more of the complexities of organizations. So we added dependency management to identify dependencies between several work items. We added something for Scrum retrospectives. We added test management capabilities. And also we added goal management systems, and the one we're talking about today is, of course, objectives and key results. Okay, and target process uses a views concept to visualize and manage these work items. So let me show you briefly how that works before we dive into how that exactly looks regarding to OKRs. So we have different kind of views in target process to show and allow you to manage the data that you store in target process. One of these views is what we call the list view, which is capable of showing a hierarchy of different objects. So you see here a hierarchy of capabilities or epics broken down into features, into user stories, and even those user stories you can break down into several tasks. Another way to view at your data is using like a virtual sticky notes board. So you have a board with lanes and rows. On this example, it shows features with their dependencies indicated by the lines over time and per team. So it's very easy to track progress or to see dependencies as in this board. Another view is to show how several items are depending on each other and progressing over time. So on a roadmap type of view, you see the work items that you chose to view with their planned and actual start and end dates. You see the green line, which is today, and you see some milestones that some of these work items might be related to. And lastly, we cannot forget about this, is that we have a dashboarding and reporting view to show quickly and very concise management or progress or other kind of information in a dashboard using beautiful reports and all on nice dashboards. Okay, so let's dive into the domain model and how we store OKRs and target process. So at the basic level, we support three types of objectives in target process: the ultimate, strategic, and tactical objectives, and they're connected in a hierarchy, and each of them can have their own set of key results. So this is the very basic, but because we store a lot of other information about the work that we're doing in target process, it's logical to connect it to the work items that we have on the right hand side. So you can see, okay, what is the work that we actually have planned or are doing, trying to accomplish the objectives on the left-hand side. And because we have also support for other goal systems like sprint goals or safe PI objectives, we also can connect those in a logical way. So it might not be the work item that you connect to objectives, but you might connect a work item through a relevant intermediate, maybe more output-oriented goal in order to achieve your outcome that you'll be measuring using key results. So if we go back to target process and show you one screen related to OKRs, and then we'll be the end of this first part of the demo. If we use a hierarchy view, we see here the hierarchy of objectives. So you have your ultimate objectives at the top. If you open those up, you get your strategic objectives underneath, and underneath that you have your tactical objectives. If I click on one tactical objective, you see that this tactical objectives has its own sets of key results with some useful information in an overview, but you also see how this tactical objective is related to its features, user stories, bugs, and even other items like team PI objectives or iteration goals. With the objectives, you can also see what the progress is and what you're actually measuring and how the plan is and the current state of the values that you're measuring. So that would be all for this first part of the demo. Back to you, Larry. Larry? Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here. All right. You see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to show more on the, a deeper look at OKRs and OKR tracking. That was primarily to show that those relationships between it. So the next portion of this discussion where we want to go is we want to talk about how do we successfully operationalize OKRs? And so This is going to start out a little lighthearted, but it's also a reality that I'm seeing where, as organizations are implementing OKRs, there's kind of patterns emerging in terms of how they're going about it. One that we're seeing is this. It's a common OKR implementation plan that basically says, something along the lines of either let's do OKRs or do OKRs. And it becomes the marching orders, and we go about doing it. And, the organization responds, and, everybody wants to be able to contribute. This is kind of the mindset of, oh, been through these goal setting fire drills before, done SMART goals and, other, management by objectives type approaches. And so we got this. And the reality is behind the scenes, we're still really asking ourselves, what exactly are OKRs? And this in practice, what we see is when we get to this point is a lot of OKRs that start to look a lot like project milestones or, specific tactical outputs that we need to deliver by a specific date. And so they start to look a lot more like task lists and less like some sort of, aspirational outcome that we're trying to strive for. Because this level of understanding, I'm just putting this back up there, this level of understanding is not really kind of reinforced in the organization. And so we have a OKR implementation plan that can be utilized to really implement the framework in the organization. And it's based loosely like on what John Cotter would recommend from, a change management, 101 type of approach, right? You're going to build your guiding coalition. You're going to build your team over here and identify some executive sponsor and some program owner. The voices of this new, this new behavioral goal setting framework that we're trying to implement, they get it and they understand it deeply, and they understand the goals associated with it. They understand the why behind it. And so we build our team, we develop a communication plan so that it's more formally rolled out, and people start to understand kind of what the organization is trying to go directionally, where the organization is trying to go directionally with this OKR framework. And it's not so ad hoc in nature. And then we're going to train internal OKR facilitators who can help to facilitate various teams and parts of the organization to build good OKRs, so that we can actually be focused on the outcomes that we're trying to deliver, and capturing those and thinking through how we're going to measure it. That's a real challenge, and it's not easy to do. And so you're going to need people that can help do that, as well as just having everyone from leaders to team members and everyone in between just understand what the OKR program, if you will, means to our organization. And then from there, you move directly into your first OKR cycle. And then you get through that cycle, and then you're going to calibrate your OKRs, and then you're going to move directly into the next cycle. And there becomes this like quarterly pattern that we're trying to develop. And then there's some metrics that we can gather to show the value of the program to our organization and how our organization is starting to benefit from this. And we can showcase those metrics. In terms of the OKR cycle itself, this version right here it's a 5-step OKR cycle. You'll see other versions of OKR cycles. This one here is, it's anchored in the step 1 being to establish those company level OKRs. I think I mentioned earlier, the enterprise context. What's our company context of what we're trying to do sets the tone for everything that follows. So that's step 1. Step 2 is this idea of co-creation and localization. Co-creation is when you're going across teams to collaborate across teams on, the OKRs. You can think about, maybe marketing and IT, making sure they're on the same page with what they're trying to do in terms of what outcomes we're trying to deliver in this quarter, and building and establishing that alignment so that their OKRs aren't going in opposite directions. And then localization is working together as a team to develop these OKRs. This is not an individual exercise. It's not something where the manager goes and stays up late and works on the weekend and creates the OKRs and then comes back to the team and says, okay, here's our OKRs, team. That's not it. It's working together as a collaborative team. And then the third part is developing the action plan. And this is where we can get into tasks and we can get into deliverables, because this is the part where we're saying, what is it we're going to do to deliver on this key result that we're trying to accomplish. And then the fourth part is checking in frequently and having some sort of establishing a cadence, so like a weekly cadence to check in and say, how are we doing with the tactical steps we're taking to deliver on these key results. And then there's some scoring patterns that we can use that we can, to determine how we succeeded or what we learned, and let that reflect. And then there's the, quarterly reviews, and then the calibration that happens. Now, so this is the operationalization aspect of it. The last thing I want to mention, then I'm going to hand it back to Yurian for the second demo, is OKR spreadsheets don't scale. Okay, you can, this is why you want to understand the value of the framework, how we want to strategically implement it in our organization, and what kind of an investment is that going to require so that we can have broad transparency and broad recognition of the goals across our organization and everybody can get behind it. When you do it in spreadsheets, inevitably people are going to use pink and mauve, and that's not fun. But the other piece is they're going to put their own kind of spin on what they want to do. And so you'll have all these different opposing kinds of spreadsheets in, within the same company, and they don't really reconcile. And so try to avoid OKR spreadsheets even as a starting point. So, okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Yurian so he can talk about how that OKR cycle, if you will, those steps, at least some of those steps, are accomplished within Targetprocess.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, let me share my screen again. This one. Okay, if you're starting to capture and maintain your OKRs and Targetprocess, this is how it would look like. So you have your different levels of objectives, split them out here on a different kind of screens by level, where you see the key results that belong to these objectives. Of course, we can easily add new objectives on any level here in these screens. But when you're doing your check-in meetings, you basically want to see how well you're doing and trying to accomplish the goal by measuring actual business outcomes related to the work that you've been delivering to your customers, you've been releasing to your customers. So to take a look at what Targetprocess provides to help you track this, so to say, progress on your key results towards your objectives, let's have a look at a quite an elaborate screen here for the demo, how you could use Targetprocess to track progress on key results. This will show different kinds of way of tracking progress. In reality, you probably choose only one of them, but for the sake of the demo, I put them all on one screen so I don't have to flip through all screens. So what information, relevant information, do we have on key results? So first, of course, we have the key result itself, which is basically a short description of what you're trying to achieve. Like with this one, we're trying to improve the Net Promoter Score from 20 to 50. Okay, so a basic type of information on a key result is a state of the key result with an accompanying state flow. So you can differentiate between key results that are draft or in progress, or if they have been fulfilled or unfulfilled or accomplished at the end. The most easy way to track how you're doing on a key result is like a confidence level indicator, which is highly subjective because you basically just say, okay, we think based on what we're seeing in the market and our customers, we think we're doing quite well or not so well, and that results in a confidence of medium, high, or low. So there's no data behind this. This is just a subjective opinion. This is the most simple one. If you want to be more precise, and that's of course what we recommend, is to actually connect it to actual data that you get from your customers or out of the market that you are trying to measure. So for example, in this example, we are measuring Net Promoter Score. We're doing that periodically. So once in a while, we send a questionnaire to our customers saying, okay, how would you value us? How would you recommend us to other people, the Net Promoter Score? So we say we want to improve from 20 to 50. So we set a start value of 20, we set a target value of 50, and then we start measuring using this questionnaire as their current value. So currently we said, okay, we wanted to go to 50 and currently we are at 25, and that gives us a progress of 70%. Of course, if I change that value, progress will change immediately, and Targetprocess will also help you interpret that progress just on an absolute scale, saying, hey, this is a good progress because you wanted to go to 50, you're already at 40, looks very good. If we take the time of the duration of a objective in as well, so we say the related objective that we're trying to reach here, the time we have for that is 69 days. Currently, we are roughly halfway through. Still, we have 36 days to go. And based on a linear progression measurement, having a current value of 40 on day 32 means we're ahead of schedule. If I would set it to something like 25, as it was in the beginning, it would say, okay, you're off track, because on the 33rd day since you've begun, you should have been further along with the changes that you made that would suggest that you can improve from 20 to 50. So this is ways that Targetprocess would help you keeping an eye on your key results. Of course, this linear progress score is not useful for all the key results because it basically only makes sense for things that you can measure often. So you do it either once in a while or you do it continuously. If you, for example, if you want to monitor something like views to your website or downloads of some kind of brochure, that you could do continuously. But if you do it only before and after, then you see that this relative progress score makes no sense. So of course, if we change this here to say we do it once in a while, then this progress would be enabled, and you say, okay, based on this, you would be ahead because we're measuring constantly how we're doing towards the thing that we're measuring in the key results. Okay, so this is very helpful if you want to check in on your OKRs and see how you're doing based on the work that you had related to your objective, like your features, your capabilities, PI objectives, etc. Next to that, it's very good to have an overview of how you're doing based on reports or dashboards. So here's one view that shows all the relevant reports that I've created in this demo environment related to OKRs. So we have different ways of looking at progress of the OKRs. So there's ultimate progress on the ultimate objectives, progress on the strategic objectives, etc. The cool thing about Targetprocess is this can be easily shared on a website, even with people who don't have a Targetprocess license. So you could share it on an intranet or even the internet if you would like that. And if you were interested in, for example, this specific report, we could just enlarge it. And because we have all the data on Targetprocess, this report is actually fully interactive. So if I wanted to know why this number here says 47%, I can just click on it and then drill down into the data, seeing, okay, what is the actual objective below it, and why does it show me that 47% based on the key results and the progress that is there. So that was how we manage OKRs in Targetprocess, and how you can track progress and results during your check-in meetings on OKRs. So for summary, back to you, Larry.
Thanks, Jeroen. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so we're going to wrap up now, just with a quick summary slide that we revisit everything that we covered. So we looked at the business value delivery framework. We split that from a left side and a right side, thinking about really how we're expressing strategy in a similar way, and then how we're connecting that by way of specific, leading indicators on the right side, and outcomes that we're trying to achieve on the left side. From there, we looked at a couple of demos within Targetprocess to show not only how we support the business value delivery framework, but also the OKR cycle to reinforce the behavior changes that we're trying to establish within the organization. We looked at a simple OKR implementation plan in the context of a much more ad hoc way of implementing OKRs, and talked about how we really do want to think about OKRs in terms of that framework definition, and then use some change management fundamentals to really get the OKRs established and anchored in your organization. And then finally, we looked at the OKR cycle, which is really provides for the teams an understanding of the behavior changes that we want to follow in order to really help the OKRs get to become part of the day-to-day work that we're doing. So with that, we want to say thank you, and we will now open it up for about 10-15 minutes of Q&A.
Thank you, Larry and Jeroen. Okay, so just a reminder, you can still submit questions through the Q&A feature in your attendee control panel at the bottom of your screen. So the first question is a shift from output to outcome focused objectives a culture change? Barry, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that was in response to something I said earlier, where I said I didn't want to kind of swing all the way to culture change, but so it's really a heads up question, because the truth of the matter is it should lead to a culture change, no doubt, right? We're talking about a very different way of thinking about the work that we're doing. The reason I made that comment that I made is because I'm trying to get us like, what is the very next step? And then what's the very next step after that, before we get to the idea of, hey, here's a business value delivery framework and here's an OKRs framework definition. Let's start talking culture change. So that was kind of the context behind the question, but I do think inevitably this would be a culture change.
Okay, cool, thank you. So next question, this is going back a little bit in the presentation, but in utilizing hypothesis-driven MVPs and leading indicators to inform work, what would be an example scenario where work would be paused? Okay,
good question. Yeah, you don't often actually hear that a lot of times when we kind of focus on do we start or do we pivot or persevere? It's kind of the language we use, but a common pause scenario would be when we've got some experiments in flight, some epics that we're working toward, or some MVPs that we're working toward, and one just fully outperforms another, and we want to reallocate a team to support more work in that area. We may want to say, you know what, this one isn't one we want to stop, right? Because it's directionally going in the right direction, but we're not going to pause there. We're going to focus our attention on another effort that looks more promising. That would be that scenario. Hope that helps.
If I can jump in on that, what is also a good scenario when you would pause is when you're working towards a goal and you've reached already some value, but there's still some value left. You recheck if continuing on this path of generating value in that area is still the most valuable thing to do. Because while you already have some value generated and there's still to come, it could be that there's a lot of bigger opportunity in another area, that there is a potential for even more value, instead of silver lining or gold plating what you already have out there. So then you would say, okay, let's pause this one and let's switch to another area where there's more value to accomplish.
All right, thank you. So when in a sales transformation are OKRs created, and which groups facilitate meetings to define, measure, and make improvements based upon them?
Okay, I'll answer from my perspective. So, you know, now, like right now, real time, like today, if I'm going to a new client, I'm going to start talking OKRs right away. I want to start getting at least kind of the equivalent of the LACE, starting to think about establishing OKRs related directly to the transformation itself. It gets the OKR language being talked about. If we're fortunate enough to be in an organization where we are, you know, dealing with kind of the top of the house, I might want to look at how are we expressing strategy. And you know, or the other question might be, the other situation that's pretty common for me is, if we're faced with a situation where an organization's just got tons of work in flight and we have no real good way to say, look, there's just no way we can do all of this. It's too much noise in the system. What do we start to do to ask ourselves, what of this work we can do? What do we need to be doing? You go back to trying to capture strategy expressed in OKRs. You can bounce that up against you know, that backlog of work you have, and start to trim work that just strategically doesn't align, because that historical backlog, as you guys I'm sure know and can be familiar with, it can grow exponentially because we don't do necessarily a good job of keeping it cleaned up. So as soon as possible, I guess, would be the succinct answer for you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, have you done this with other organizations?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we have done this with other organizations. We haven't gotten so far yet where we're to the point where we're ready to capture white papers or things of that nature and start to showcase the outcomes of this. It takes a lot, as you might imagine. You know, the fact that we're able to do this with an agile transformation is beneficial. Because you're already, you know, when you escalate the conversation to how we like package up our work, so to speak, when you're at that level and you're at the strategy level, then you're having a discussion that can get this in place fairly soon, and then you just have to harden it over time. It takes some time to get it fully integrated.
Okay, thanks. If some key results today are more project milestone based, what steps should you take to move towards more business outcome based key results?
So for me, the question I'll ask again and again in any kind of OKR facilitation session is simply why. Why are we doing that? What's the reason behind it? And you can ask why a couple of times, and it forces the conversation to get to what's the reason that we're doing these project-based milestones. So why is a great question. Depending on where the organization is in their adoption, it could just be purely training as well, where you want to go in and talk about how to formulate outcomes. What would outcome-based KRs look like? And how would you make them measurable? So a combination of training and facilitation, and a willingness to go through some refactoring, depending on the person that you're working with or the people that you're working with, that could be harder than at other times, because some people are very much, you know, conditioned to wanting very specific tasks, very specific dates, very specific outputs. And so you have that output outcome discussion, and you know, you facilitate a kind of rethinking of those KRs.
Okay.
I hope that answered the question.
Next question, regarding adopting the 5-step OKR cycle, the second goal is to co-create and localize OKRs. Is this different from defining OKRs for value streams?
It only wants to reinforce a slightly different set of behaviors and highlight the importance of it. Okay, so whether you're doing it in a value stream or you're kind of dipping outside of the value stream, it's less of a factor than saying, look, we don't want to create our OKRs in a vacuum. Like we know we're going to do them as a team, but we don't want to create them in a vacuum. We don't want our interpretation of these higher level objectives that we're trying to influence to be done in a vacuum. And so that's when you use that language of saying, hey, let's, like I'll give you a good one here is you can get a group of teams and do the equivalent of big room OKR planning, where you literally have teams in a room and they're working together individually as teams, and then going to other teams and say, hey, we're doing this, we're creating this KR that it's going to have a dependency on you guys, you marketing team or whatever team, to do something as well. Can we collaborate on this? And so the language that's used there in the OKR cycle is meant to kind of facilitate the introduction of that way of creating OKRs for a client.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, so this next question is for Yurian. The tool seems very manual. Can the results be automated to bring in actuals of the key results? For example, if we are measuring SLAs, but that is measured elsewhere, how do we bring those in?
Yeah, good question. Indeed, currently, what I was showing, the start value, target value, current value, we update the current value manually, but this is, of course, if you're in a little bit bigger organization with a lot of data coming in, this is not feasible to do that all the time manually. Targetprocess has a very powerful automation engine that allows it to connect to any other system as long as there is an open API available. So, for example, you could connect the current value of something of some key result to for systems like Google Analytics or also business systems where you can extract or the other way you're being pushed data from those systems. Will be releasing in a couple of weeks a new entity that is called measurement, where we can actually store all these data coming from any other system that we want to measure, if it's business systems or maybe DevOps systems, if you want to measure your flow of development. So it doesn't need to be a manual process. You can automate it now, and even better in a couple of weeks with an extra entity.
Okay, thank you. Next question. In your experience, have you been able to marry OKRs and 4DX, 4 disciplines of execution?
I'm not familiar with 4 disciplines of execution. You got me on that.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yurian, is that something that you're familiar with?
No, sorry.
Okay. Do they want to maybe rephrase the question a little bit?
Yeah, if you don't mind, person asking the question, rephrasing. So I'll move on to the next question. Do you have any client statistics or reports that reflect the change in business value after implementing this model?
Like I said earlier, we don't necessarily have any white papers put together yet, but what I can tell you is, from my own firsthand experience, seeing, a lot of the, you see SLT meetings and things like that, where they're meeting on, a quarterly cycle or something like that. And you see them go from looking at work like a list of projects and red, yellow, green status and kind of determining what's our risk to our projects and things. And you start to see that behavior change switch to here's our objectives and key results, and here's the work we're doing to deliver against those key results, and here's what we're measuring. You see the conversation change, and you see, like at the product level, more energy put into this idea of, how will I measure this? What's going to be there becomes this kind of behavior change of just trying to kind of like package up work to more packaging up these ideas and these outcomes and these experiments that we're trying to do to accomplish. So the bigger thing that I've experienced in the near term is, yes, seeing this in practice, but more seeing just the language change and the conversation change broadly across an organization, I think has been some of the key things that I've enjoyed seeing. But we will at some point put together some white papers on this and share you know, client stories and stuff like that.
Thank you, Larry and Yurian. So we are at the top of the hour. So that went by fast. So we have to wrap it up now. Thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and experience. And thanks to all of you out there listening and engaging. And please look up for a follow-up email with a link to view today's recording that should be coming out tomorrow. And any questions, of course, feel free to contact us. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Alyssa.